Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are here for an extraordinary council meeting, 21st of August. And before I begin the meeting properly, I need to let you know about the emergency fire alarms going or anything like that and where you should go. So I will take this opportunity to advise you that in the event of an emergency alarm sounding, we should leave the building using the nearest available emergency exit as directed from outside this chamber and assemble in the car park across the road from the Bedford College main entrance, which is to your left as you leave the front of the Borough Council, and that you stay there until further notice. Thank you. Can I make the usual request to have all mobile phones switched off or on silent? And the other thing will be is please speak very clearly into your microphone. Now, online, people can hear you absolutely brilliantly, but this council chamber is really bad for hearing, and therefore we need everyone to speak into your microphone, speak loudly, and if I can't hear you, I will stop you and ask you to repeat what you have said. Okay? We've got, this isn't the normal council meeting, full council meeting, it's an extraordinary meeting, and therefore we haven't got the usual agenda, and there are no questions from the public. We've got 3 items to consider tonight, but in fact we've got 2 items to consider because the second item about the local plan has been withdrawn and will come back at a later date. So I'll start with apologies for absence, and I have a long list of councillors that are away because being an extraordinary meeting, it wasn't in the council calendar, and therefore people have made other arrangements. So I've got apologies for absence from councillors Gallagher, Crofts, Dinn, Martin Moran-Bryant, Nawaz, Oliver, Valentine and White, and we have apologies for lateness from councillor Frost for this evening's meeting. Are there any other apologies? Anyone else missing? No? Okay. So therefore we will move on to item number 2, which is the disclosure of local and or disclosable pecuniary interests. So as members appreciate, it is important that we observe the provisions of the Code of Conduct relating to the disclosure of interests. May I ask if any member wishes to disclose the existence and nature of any local and or disclosable pecuniary interest in tonight's business? Has anybody got any interest to declare? No? Okay. We will move on then to item number 3, which is the entertainment resort complex, Universal Destinations and Experiences, Special Development Order Statutory Consultation Response. Now, I hope that Councillor Spice is going to be introducing this. So I will ask you to introduce the Council's response to the statutory consultation on the Special Development Order for the Entertainment Resort Complex. Over to you, Councillor Spice.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So I would just like to introduce this report. The full council report explains how the council plans to respond to the government's consultation on Universal Destination Experiences planning application, which is being handled nationally as a Special Development Order, an SDO. I have made some updates and amendments to the recommendations on the report which were issued earlier today, which includes details to explore and bring forward proposals related to controlled parking and measures to control temporary lets in areas around the proposed development site. I also wish to clarify 2 parts of the covering report on sections 7.4e This is related to temporary accommodation with construction of the resort. And 7.9, this is not about additional mitigation being added. The socio-economic task force is there to discuss and work on this type of issues as and if they arise. If the proposed order is issued, there will be a lengthy period of the Council's continued working with the investors to monitor the potential impact on health and well-being. This is not to discuss what we are going to do locally. This is a local government response to a national government consultation. Issues we want to resolve locally, such as parking in resident areas, will be addressed locally by the Council. As a statutory consultee, Bedford Borough Council must give its comments after today's special full council meeting and the special executive meeting next week on the 27th of August. Council officers have reviewed the technical documents submitted by Universal and provided comments on each one. See Appendix E. The Council has worked hard to secure this investment for Bedford. Councillors, officers, parish councils, neighbouring authorities and local partners have all welcomed Universal to the borough and built strong working relationships with their teams and advisors. And I am forever grateful to Universal for choosing Bedford Borough out of the whole of Europe, for working with us, for listening to us and addressing our wants and concerns. Again, to point out, they have worked so hard with local parish councils and neighbouring councils. Officers have supported Universal in understanding the local context and priorities. They've arranged for the company to meet with community groups and organisations such as colleges and universities, making sure the planning application reflects local needs and opportunities. The Council has also worked closely with government departments and agencies to make sure the application takes account of Bedford's circumstances. Strong national governance is in place for the project and the Council is playing an active role. And to highlight again, we have teams working closely with Universal and central government. This is not being done to us, but a working relationship, one that is giving opportunities to the future of our borough that we could have only dreamed of before. It will bring so many new and different employment opportunities across all levels, as well as all the work opportunities that will arise locally as a result of the project. To date, there have been an incredible amount of expressions of interest to work on this project received. This is a real opportunity for both today's residents and future residents, our children and their children's children, an opportunity for a prosperous future for all. Universal are global leaders in the theme park design and operation with experience worldwide. They've chosen Bedford for their next major project, designing both the park and supporting infrastructure to ensure success. For the resort to thrive, they need smooth transport links, a strong local workforce, good training opportunities, a reliable supply chain and a supportive local tourism industry. Most importantly, they need the backing of the local community, who they want as proud neighbours and advocates for the resort. This is one of the biggest tourism developments the UK has ever seen, as well as the largest foreign business inward investment in decades in the country. It is a project of national importance, and please do not lose sight of that. It makes us the envy of not just the region, but the whole country, and it will put Bedford on the map, giving us a national and international profile, mentioned in the same breath as centres such as Orlando, California, Beijing, Osaka and Singapore, and then Bedford. So we as elected members are privileged to represent our constituents and borough residents. We know the great things Bedford has to offer: the accessible road infrastructure, the rail links to London and beyond, proximity to Luton Airport, the great local businesses already here, the long and rich history of the borough, and the diverse communities which makes our place what it is. Now with this project, the rest of the world will get to learn about Bedford, and this project will bring many millions of them here to visit, experience it and spend money in our local economy. While it will bring huge economic benefits, it will also have local impacts, such as increased visitors and pressure on infrastructure. Universal has assessed these impacts and put forward plans to reduce them. Officers have reviewed these plans, and Appendix E outlines the Council's response. There are three main factors that will help balance the benefits with the local impacts. 1. Government decision and conditions. MHCLG will make the final decision and, if approved, will attach conditions to control how the site is built and run. This ensures it operates in an acceptable way. 2. National oversight. As a project of national importance, the government will oversee and scrutinise its progress. The council will remain involved to make sure local issues are heard. 3. Universal's commitment. Universal wants the park to be a long-term success. Being a good neighbour is key to that, and we are confident they will work with the council to address any issues that come up during construction or operation. With all this in mind, we need to unite across parties, and I urge you to support and agree to the recommendations set out in this report, but with the addition of an amended sentence. In 2.13a, the change will reflect a financial support package to the council to help manage the local impact of the development, including construction management, local transport plans, and measures to manage the housing market during construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spice. Is the motion seconded? Seconded by Councillor Coombs. Move to questions. Are there any questions on the report? Councillor Foley.
We've just been told. We've been told, subject to an amendment. I'm trying to understand the relationship of the amendment to the document because I can't find the paragraph number that you're suggesting is changed. I can't understand the relationship. There seems to be difficulty, at least, in understanding what you're saying at this stage.
So it's on the recommendations in the report, section 2.1, bracket 3, bracket A. Did you want to find that? In the covering report, yes.
On the recommendation.
Shall I read what it originally says, and then I'll read what we've amended it to, if that helps, Councillor Foley. So it says, a financial support package to the council to help mitigate resource needed to manage the local impacts of the development, including construction management, local transport plans, and measures to manage the housing market during construction. And we've changed pretty much just one word. Let's find my right piece of paper now. So it says, a financial support package to the council to help manage the local impacts of the development, including construction management, local transport plans, and measures to manage the housing market during construction. So, to be precise, it's the word mitigate has been taken out so that it's not confusing. We're very, very clear, because what we've tried to do is be very, very clear and not be open-ended on anything.
Is that okay, Councillor Foley? Good. Councillor Edmonds.
Councillor Spice, I know you said this was not necessarily around local issues, but in light of concerns regarding the borough's financial position, it's more important than ever that we secure maximum long-term value for every major development. Not just in...
I'm struggling to hear you.
Are you? Sorry, it's my throat.
Can you start again, please?
I have been struggling myself.
And really put your
I can't hear
microphone close to you.
Excuse me. Right, I'll start again. In light of concerns regarding the borough's financial position, it's more important than ever that we secure maximum long-term value from every major development, not just in jobs, but in town centre vitality and local procurement. How is the council ensuring that the Universal development, possibly the biggest opportunity any town has seen in recent memory, actively supports the recovery of Bedford town centre and our struggling high streets, rather than drawing economic activity away from them?
Did you hear that okay? Because I still had a bit of difficulty, but I sympathise if you've got a bad throat. Okay.
Okay, so thank you for your question, and I hope you're feeling better soon. That sounds really, really horrible. So it is really important for us that Bedford, and this is why we've been working so closely. You know, our officers have done an incredible job. Bedford is the working partner for this project. They are coming to Bedford Borough, and Bedford is our town centre. We will have so many, I'm going to call them tourists, but I don't know if it's tourists or visitors coming to Bedford. We will be the destination. We are working on the transport links to get to the park, not necessarily road. So we want people to stay here and then spend their money here. And I know when I've been to places like this, sometimes you do two centres, so you go to two different places, but actually we know how, because we're here, so we know how connected Bedford is to most of the rest of the country, even on local transport. So there's no, you know, in a dream, you'd stay here, you'd go for your day trips, but you're still in Bedford because you've come to the park for Bedford. So we are working to promote Bedford. We are building on a tourist strategy. We are building on regenerating our town centre. Actually, even, I hope you've noticed that town is looking a lot better. It is a lot cleaner. There seems to be a happy buzz around it at the moment, and people are getting involved, and there aren't so many empty shops as there has been previously, because it goes up and down. I know it goes up and down. So this is going to be, if I say one of the best or the best opportunity for Bedford Town Centre to be the incredible place that it deserves to be as our county town.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? You want to carry on?
No, I was just going to follow that up. I was just going to say thank you. I asked it just because, not just because the resort opens in 2030, but because the decisions that shape its impact are being made now in this room. That means securing local procurement support for our town centre and commitments that deliver real economic value from the ground up, starting during construction and not waiting for the gates to open. It's about making sure the biggest opportunity in a generation doesn't pass Bedford by. We want Bedford to bathe in the light of the development, not just to look at it glimmering on the horizon with regret.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No, in which case we'll move to comments. Are there any comments, Councillor McMurdo? And then, sorry, I do know that you wish to move an amendment, but it should be after the comments. So, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like to endorse this opportunity. I think it's the best opportunity for Bedford, is how Councillor Spice has encapsulated it. This is actually an opportunity in a generation, over half a century, for this town, for this region, for this nation, and for the rest of Europe, from how you introduced your report. So let's not lose sight. This is a big opportunity. I'm indebted to Comcast having the confidence in Universal in choosing Bedford, putting cash up front in the way of an investment in buying and securing land to bring this forward. They've been kicking about, I know, in the UK for 8 years, and they've come to Bedford. So I, with no hesitation, with some reservations or things to consider going forward, my arms are open for this. So I'd just like to move on. I'm delighted that our officers have included something that is dear to my heart. This will be sitting right in the centre of the Elstow Brook catchment. So let you be under no illusion, from a floodwater management, water resources, this is key to this borough. But what I'm happy to share with you, and I'm indebted to the officers that they've deferred to the Bedfordshire and Ivell Internal Drainage Board, of which I am, and many of you are members of the board, but you have deferred to them for their expert knowledge and advice. However, very positively, I'd like just to put on record our thanks through this council for Universal's positive interaction with the Beds and Ivell IDB. And I think I'm pretty safe in saying that it's one of the first developers that have come forward, in my experience, of flood and water management, and you all know how long that's been, that's actually been putting this front and centre of what they want to do in our borough. So I am delighted, and I'm really, really impressed with the consideration they're giving to flood and water management in our borough, in particular the Elstow Brook catchment. So I, open arms, welcome this development, and I look forward to seeing it before I move on to pastures different to what I've had for the last 64 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coombs, do you wish to speak before or after Councillor Van has made his amendment? Because it's up to you.
I'd like to speak on the actual motion as it is, if I may, Madam Speaker, as long as Councillor Van doesn't think I'm jumping in front of him. Fine. I think we need to start with some thanks. This is a most fantastic, wonderful opportunity, as I know many other members feel. We need to thank all of the officers who've worked so tirelessly to bring this to Bedford. A lot of the work gone on behind the scenes, but I know they worked tirelessly without stopping to make this happen. I think we need to thank all councillors and MPs of all parties and none who have also enthusiastically endorsed Universal. And of course we need to thank Universal themselves for choosing Bedford. It is a fantastic endorsement of our borough, and I know we're all delighted to have them here. It really has also caught the public imagination. My brother phoned me the day that it was announced, and he lives in Scotland, and he had heard up there and said, is it true you're having Universal Studios in your borough? And I said, not only in our borough, but in my ward. And I have to say, along with Councillor Spice and Councillor Frost, we're delighted that this is actually cited within our ward. The proliferation of Universal Facebook groups with people daily flying drones around the site and commenting on every lorry movement, I think shows how Bedford residents have really taken this to heart. And it is the most fantastic opportunity, both socially but also economically. It is going to bring a lot to our borough, and in terms of regeneration and jobs, there are few downsides to this. So it's a very good thing, and I thoroughly endorse the response to the SDO that is being put forward. And I don't want to comment on that specifically, but I want to make a couple of other comments as ward member for Wixham's and Wilstead ward, which includes Stuart B and Kempston Hardwick and the areas where this is going to take shape. And I think it's really important that when this comes, that this council gets its act together as well, because it's a great opportunity, but this council has to be responsive and address things. And as a ward member, I want to see, and I'm pleased that it's recognised in here, about parking and controlled parking zones for residents. It needs to be there, and this council needs to be sure that outside of all of the formal work that is going on with the SDO, that this council is preparing and that it is putting measures in place to ensure that residents are protected. Yes, everybody is supportive of it, but it's going to mean a lot of traffic movements. It's going to mean a lot of construction traffic going through the ward. It's going to mean that it's going to attract a lot of visitors, we hope, and they're going to need somewhere to park. And I think it's important. We already talked previously about controlled parking zone when we talked about Wixham Station on its own. This is obviously much, much bigger, and therefore it is important that this council
addresses that. As I say, this is outside of the SDO, but I think it's important to put this on record that as ward members, we want to see that residents are taken into account with this. Equally, we wouldn't want to see a proliferation of Airbnbs, which could create problems locally if the life is taken out of the community and people buy properties speculatively to sell Airbnbs. So I'm pleased to see that there's going to be a strategy for dealing with the housing situation as well, and to ensure that local residents who are going to live nearby, who are going to live in close proximity to this, it is going to come with some issues, and we want to make sure that those issues are addressed. So I'm thoroughly supportive of the council's response to the SDO, and I'm pleased that outside of that, that this council recognises it has a lot of work to do in order to address issues that will safeguard the interests of residents in Wixhams and Stuartby, and also in Wootton and Kempston and other areas that are in close proximity to this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And now we've got the long-awaited amendment by Councillor Van, and it's quite a lengthy one.
Yes.
Which makes the whole motion long. So would you like to read it out? And
if you would like me to do so.
Very clearly, very slowly, and into your microphone.
When you said finally you get to me, I didn't think Councillor Coombs and Councillor McMurdo actually spoke for that long, to be fair. But if I may, I'll start by reading out the amendment and then give a little narrative, and then we'll see if anyone seconds it. I'm not going to read out the recommendations that exist in the report as is, because that would just double the length of my reading. So the first change is to add to recommendation number 1. This is the recommendations in the covering report if you can't see those, but you hopefully have printed copies. This is more for people if they are watching it online. To add the words subject to technical changes set out below. That's fairly self-explanatory. And I will now go to the new bits added in. So there is a new point C to delete paragraphs 3.154 and 3.155 from the consultation response to the Secretary of State MHCLG set out in Appendix E in order to avoid references to the withdrawal of the Local Plan 2040 prior to that discussion, albeit acknowledging that a new local plan should be commenced without delay. And D, to delete paragraph 3.120. Okay. And then to add new recommendation 2.2, that full council requests, separate from the planning process, that the executive work with the Universal Destinations and Experiences to develop an accommodation and housing strategy from day 1. 2, work with Universal Destinations and Experiences and developers of unadopted roads to develop a parking strategy to enable restrictions to be implemented consistently across public and unadopted developments. 3, produce, separate to the planning process but in the context of the impact of Universal Studios, A, a housing strategy, B, an infrastructure strategy, C, a frontline service strategy, D, a transport strategy, and E, a finance strategy. 4, negotiate further planning performance agreements, PPAs, to support council capacity, including but not limited to planning capacity, and negotiate accommodation strategies informally separate to the planning process with Universal to ensure that sufficient accommodation can be found for workers, minimising pressure on local housing stock. 5, produce a quantified proposal on which basis to negotiate a substantial specific funding settlement from the government for Bedford Borough Council to deal with the impact of the construction and operation of the project, this agreement to be in place as a matter of urgency. To add new recommendation 2.3, to refer to the General Purposes Committee a request to amend the Constitution at the earliest opportunity to set up a Universal Project Overview and Scrutiny Committee for all matters connected with the Council's responsibilities and oversight in relation to the Universal Project, including maximising the economic benefits, securing the cultural and educational benefits, mitigating the impact of construction, the need for improved infrastructure, the impact on housing for local residents. while awaiting the creation of the formal Universal Project Overview and Scrutiny Committee, that an informal 8-member politically proportionate Overview and Scrutiny Committee be created with immediate effect in shadow form. That is, 2 Conservative councillors, 2 Liberal Democrat councillors, 2 Labour councillors, 1 Green councillor, 1 Independent councillor, all above to be appointed in liaison with the Chief Executive, all to be drawn from non-executive members. That was hopefully read and clearly read, and people heard that, although there are printed copies, hopefully, so it's not a surprise, and it has been circulated. Madam Speaker, that's me moving it. I presume I can speak to it if it's seconded. So, can someone second it now, and then I introduce it? Is that right?
I do the seconding.
Right.
I ask who is going to second it.
Well, that's the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. And
Reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Meader.
Oh, okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm happy to second the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Are there any questions?
I reserve my right to speak to now give the narrative. Now it's been seconded. Is that okay, Madam Speaker? Thank you. Just to give the little bit of narrative behind that, because I realised I was reading out arguably what might come across as some very boring text that talks about housing strategy and stuff. But I think the questions asked actually highlight exactly why this amendment is worth it, if you like, because there are actually very few times when we as full council will have an opportunity to make our views known, to discuss, to raise the issues that Universal may produce. And actually, Councillor Coombs, you could have almost written what I was intending to say for me in that context, because many of the issues you mentioned are indeed things that I think we need a coherent strategy for. I'm just going to pull out, though. Well, I don't mind not being seen, but... Oh, look, there we go. Councillor Royden, you obviously have my back. I would just like to start by sharing the comments from others, though, that this is the best opportunity, I think was the term Councillor McMurdo used, generational, international. Okay, the vote of confidence in the borough and the borough of Bedford and the people of the borough of Bedford is phenomenal. And I think there is a sort of complete support for that within this chamber. And I think we are all hugely excited by the potential that this offers us. And I would also like to echo the thanks that have been said for residents, for engaging. Those of us who went to those early consultation meetings, they were so well organised and so well run by the Comcast Universal team that actually residents there were excited and felt like they were contributing and feeding in, including, you know, everything from accessible changing places, facilities within the site, to how they were going to engage or get there or from there. So I think that, you know, it's worth thanking residents at the outset. I would echo Councillor Coombs, although he left some people off, but thanks to councillors of all parties who did say that, including parish councillors, all the MPs, mayors, plural, okay, over time, officers. Officers really do need our thanks, and Universal, again, for their vote of confidence here. So I just wanted to put that on record as well. And then, Councillor Coombs, you said, and this is not me picking at your speech, but it's me basically saying I completely agree with you. When this comes, this council needs to get its act together, I think were the words you used. And it's about more than temporary accommodation, you know, it's about more than just the Airbnb market. It's actually about housing more generally than that. There are issues that will be raised in relation to that that will be of concern to all our residents that we need to be able to address. And I should say all of these comments separate to the planning process, but because this is the chance that we get as full council to have a voice on this now, to then have an ongoing voice and guarantee that ongoing voice, I think it's really important to support this amendment this evening to guarantee that input and that awareness and that taking this seriously, and the fact that we've got a job to do, that we are actually doing that job as a council in terms of making sure that we can do what we can on behalf of residents when this is happening. It's not just during the construction either, it's beyond the construction. It's you know, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, 50 years down the line. It is such a massive game changer. It is such a massive change for the borough that we need to get these things right. So the shorter narrative on the amendment, and I'm sorry I had to read out the whole amendment, we must come up with a way of displaying them on the screen at some point so that we don't have to, because everyone in the room has a printed copy. There were two technical changes, as I say, that were related to the local plan or something not being quite referred to right as council responding. So they're the two sort of smaller changes. And then the second sort of major bit is to make sure we are getting this right as a council in terms of, it's, as I say, it's not just parking actually, it's parking, traffic, transport, all of these things that we have a job to do as a council, separate to planning, but we have a job to do, and we should be able to be confident and certain as a council that we are doing that job to the best of our ability. And that's also partly why it says produce a quantified proposal. So we're talking a serious proposal to, well, as it says in the recommendation, to the government to make sure that the financial package that the council needs to be talking to the government about is what we need as a borough. So we need to be talking about that now to get it right. It's not just when it opens, and it's not in a couple of years when it starts, because as anyone who follows those many Facebook groups, as you say, Councillor Cleves knows, it started already. Things happen already. Things are happening already to manage the site, and we see that on a daily basis. There are things already that people need to know that we're on top of as a local authority. And it's not about just one, group being in the executive now. In 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, in 20 years' time, who knows what the makeup of this council will be like, and who knows, therefore, what we will want to see in place to ensure that residents can have their voices heard. So that's to give it a little bit of a narrative around planning performance agreements, around doing our job to have these strategies, to look at the impact on frontline services beyond parking and temporary housing and Airbnbs. Actually, there's a bigger piece of work to do, isn't there? As well as a finance strategy, as was mentioned. Councillor Edmonds mentioned the need to get that right, actually, in terms of the benefit for Bedford Borough for many years to come, beyond construction. So the last point of this was a referral to set up an overview and scrutiny committee, because that recognises just how significant this investment is for the borough. I would say, though, that I've worded this carefully, and I've done this deliberately to ensure that it's about the matters connected with the council's responsibilities and oversight in relation to the Universal project. This isn't about being critical of the project as a whole, because we are all so excited by this project. And you can see that, and you can feel that palpably in those consultation meetings and whenever you talk to people about it. Councillor Coombs has somebody phoning him from Scotland. I've had people phoning me from around. Whenever I've gone anywhere other than Bedford, which is very rare, of course, but whenever I've gone anywhere other than Bedford, people go, "Oh, Bedford, isn't that where that theme park's coming?" You go, "Yes, it is." It's really unbelievably exciting, and it has captured national as well as local imagination. And I think with that in mind, let's get it right. And that's why I'm proposing this amendment this evening. It's a constructive amendment, it's a critical friend amendment, it's an amendment to make sure we get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question is about your last point on a scrutiny, overview and scrutiny committee. I think we all know that our officers in this council have got plenty of work to get on with and do. I think we have a perfectly capable and able environment overview and scrutiny committee. So why can't that be added to the work programme? Why can't Universal be part of the process of that committee? As it's more closely aligned with environment than anything else.
It's a really interesting point. It's a point that I've had in discussions with others. I'd love to.
Sorry, Councillor Ban, when you turn
Sorry,
away...
when I turn my head, you can't hear me, so I'm going to... Councillor Weir, it's not me being rude. I've got to look into the glowing red light, apparently, in order to be heard. So, with that in mind, I think it's a really good question, but you say Environment Committee for one aspect, housing within budget. You may be aware of some of the constitutional changes recently. It's about more than just parking, traffic and stuff that the Environment Committee deals with, and actually that's at real risk of it being subsumed into a whole work stream of lots of other things that are really important that the council does. This is about recognising the sheer scale and significance of this project, the generational significance, the 50 years plus significance, that actually we have to look at it in the round as a whole. I'm really trying to avoid using the actual word university, because that's, but we all, if you use it in normal language you do sometimes say the word universal, don't you? But you've got to look at it as a whole. And if we're not doing that, and it's not about more work for officers actually, it's about scrutining work that, as I understand it, much of it already is going on. The Transport Strategy Group, these are things that I think it's important to make sure that we are confident as members from across all parties, and every backbench member and every member of this council is sure that the council is doing its job. And actually, as I say, critical friend-wise, actually I don't think it's something the executive need to be worried about in terms of having that scrutiny and having that transparency of processes, and it doesn't need to be. I recognise the concern one member shared with me around the potential risk of political grandstanding, and I think we all agree that wouldn't be helpful. What's important though is good scrutiny, and I think I think all of our scrutiny committees actually do good scrutiny and do important work. And I'd like to praise every member of the scrutiny committee here, because actually I think we have a really healthy culture of scrutiny within this local authority. So in that context, I hope that at least partly answers the question. But you're saying no, it doesn't whilst I'm speaking. So I've tried to explain why it simply doesn't fit under one committee. It constitutionally doesn't. It doesn't as defined. So if you don't accept that as an answer, I can't help you beyond that. But that is genuinely my view. In answer to your question, it doesn't just fit under one committee. It is a whole thing of its own, and it is a 50-year, 100-year... I mean, it's such a massive scale of development, as everyone has said, that it needs that confidence and that protection for members to ask questions.
Any more questions? Councillor Sierra.
Thank you. I would just also like to echo Councillor Weir's concerns. We're talking about something that's coming into the county, and yes, it's fantastic. One thing that I would encourage everyone or look at an aspect is it's how Universal is integrating within the council, and the last thing that we want to do is separate it and deal with it on its own accord. By having an overview and scrutiny committee, I see that you're rolling your eyes and shaking your head, Henry. I don't know why, but why you would want to scrutinise that separately, and why couldn't we cover it within the borough? Because it's going to be, part of Bedford, part of our integration going on for years and years, like you're saying. So I feel like Councillor Weir has a very valid point, and I will also echo him in saying I don't feel like you answered the question. If you could please just clarify a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay, to explain why I was shaking my head whilst you were speaking, there are two reasons. The first is I think I did answer the question. It doesn't fit within one overview and scrutiny committee. It fits under many, all the aspects that are going to have an impact on residents' lives. So I don't think this needs to get sort of in that political space of you didn't answer the question. I tried to answer the question. I accept that you may not be happy with that answer, but I did answer the question as I see it in terms of how this sits and the sheer scale of this investment. So I don't think it's quite a fair criticism in my direction to say I didn't answer the question, because it doesn't fit within one committee and it's such a large scale investment. You need to look at the thing in the round. The first point you made, an overview and scrutiny committee for all matters connected with the council's responsibilities and oversight. This isn't us and them. I've talked to Universal about some of this. They're aware of this amendment. We all talk to the Universal team. I hope we can all get briefings as councillors. I think they are superb. I started my introduction by saying how good they are at consultation, how good they are at reaching out to councillors, parish councillors, residents. I share Councillor Coombs' views on that, to be honest. I think they have been superb. I think the view of overview and scrutiny, that's just the constitutional name for it, by the way. I don't think we need to get hung up on that as a concept and see it as divisive. And it actually worries me a bit if you do see it as divisive, because actually the whole purpose is it's a critical friend that can ask good questions and stand up for residents. Not everything has to happen behind closed doors, and sometimes we have transparent conversations, and I think that's fine, and I don't think we need to be scared of it. So that's me responding to that. I don't think it is at all divisive, and I don't think it fits within one committee, and that's why I've proposed this evening.
Thank you. Councillor McMurdo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was going to try and avoid asking Councillor Vann a question, but I just want to seek some clarity and put it to you. 3 points. Are you bringing this amendment forward in particular reference to scrutiny? And you know my early views on the word scrutiny, but let me just point out, understand this is not scrutinising the training company. So let's be clear. So the 3 points is you seek to make this committee fit for purpose for decades to come, and to illustrate the seriousness that this council affords to this project, which is over 50 years since this country's had such private investment. Is that a correct summary?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Van, in terms of the amendment, you've listed 5 strategies that you'd like to see the council put forward. Could you just explain a little bit about how, could you just explain slightly how you get around my concern that this is in effect asking the council to create a parallel local plan when we already have a local plan that we are not able to currently build a local plan in name?
Specifically, these are separate to the planning process, as indicated. That's partly not to go anywhere near the SDO process, but this is actually the council doing its job. Also, infrastructure isn't just a planning matter or a local plan matter. Frontline services are not just a local plan or a planning matter. A transport strategy isn't just a local plan or a planning matter. The council has many of these things anyway, but they need to be revised in light of Universal, unrelated to the local plan. So it's a good question if I was saying we needed a new specific local plan related strategy in relation to, and you're right, there are papers that are called similar things, but that's not to say the council shouldn't have. And a finance strategy certainly isn't a planning matter or connected to a local plan, and we definitely urgently need one of those, I'm sure we all agree, although I know we're not discussing any of that this evening. Likewise, housing can go far beyond planning in terms of, and Councillor Coombs is absolutely right, the additional recommendations actually made, whilst I was disappointed with how close they were to the meeting to come on as changes to the report, they are actually helpful and constructive in terms of short-term lets, Airbnb and what we do on that, and looking at what regulations are available to us. But they're not tied to the local plan process. So does that, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor Coombs?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Van, I don't know if this is a question for you or for the Chief Executive, but you've listed at the very bottom in your scrutiny panel the number of places allocated to each party. Surely if you set this committee up, then it gets lumped in with all the other scrutiny committees, and the proportionality thing will work across. We all have those conversations as group leaders where we split them eventually. So I don't know if you can mandate this is how it should be, other than that you'd like it to be like that, but does it not have to be lumped in with all the other scrutiny committees as well in order to decide actually how we end up with the numbers of this committee?
Great. So if the Chief Executive will allow me to have a go at answering this, as it says, this amendment refers to general purposes, this request, for that discussion at the General Purposes Committee, because that's the only way in which an open scrutiny committee can be created. What it then says is an informal 8-member, create it now, so that for the time being, for the interim, we can have those discussions now. So the answer to your question is no, that doesn't fall foul of any constitutional problems, because it's literally saying, let's get together now and have that conversation now, because I think we need it. And it's proportional to the council, yeah. But it's not in any way interrupting the constitutional process by which general purposes would have to consider this. Then full council would still have to vote on that at a later. You get a second chance at stopping this if you like. But that's the sort of process. Does that make sense? So the answer is that's a shadow informal, but I thought it was helpful to illustrate that kind of spread.
Thank you. Any more questions? In which case we'll move to comments. So, comments please. Councillor Meader.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. We welcome, when I say we, the Labour group, we welcome the Bedford Borough Council's universal consultation response, and are delighted that this project is going ahead. Even tonight, just looking around the room, the enthusiasm in this chamber is quite unique actually, and it's quite special. And you know, I've been a councillor for many years, and you'd be amazed over those years how many people from Kempston and Bedford have come up to me and said, you know what, nothing ever happens around here, does it? Well, that's about to change, believe me, on steroids. But yeah, anyway. However, going back to the amendment. We support the amendment put forward by the Lib Dems to ask General Purposes Committee to establish an overview and scrutiny committee to oversee the Bedford Borough Council response to the impact of the Universal development. I think this is important. We want to work with Universal and the executive to make sure we represent the interests of all of our residents throughout the borough as the project and infrastructure affected by it goes forward. The borough's executive's response to the opportunities and challenges the Universal project will bring must be accountable to the rest of the council and the residents we represent. The committee, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, will enable us to ensure regular oversight and provide a place for public and member questions as they arise. And I know it's been questioned already tonight, but this is important. This is certainly the Labour Group's view, and I'm sure that this view is shared by many in here tonight. This is not to scrutinise in any way Universal, quite the opposite. We want to work with Universal, yeah. This in some ways is to scrutinise everyone in this room and the council. That's what scrutiny is for, and I think it is the right way forward. And after serious consideration, and it was serious consideration, our group has decided to support the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I've forgotten, I think somebody else.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes, it was Councillor Foley. I knew somebody had.
Thank you, Speaker. In the Green Group, we have very much welcomed the opportunity of the theme park coming to Bedford. But we've also been anxious that the council gets started on its work to maximise the benefits and minimise the downsides. Now, while Councillor Spice sort of made reference to this debate being about, you know, other matters, it's also the first real opportunity for this council to express its views on how to maximise the benefits and minimise the downsides. And because the opportunity has arisen in the context of a special development order and responded to that, does not mean that we should pass over the opportunity to express our views. In terms of committees, my understanding is that the Environment and Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee has already got plenty to do anyway. So in addition to the reasons that Councillor Van was giving, attempting to deal with all of the issues around this enormous development would create a danger of overloading that committee or squeezing out massively important issues related to the rest of the borough. So, you know, from my perspective, even if it was entirely and utterly within the purview of that committee, it would still be the right thing to do to set up a separate overview and scrutiny committee to deal with these issues. Yeah, I'm aware that elsewhere in the country we have councils that have multiple planning committees because they have so many planning issues that a single planning committee can't deal with them. Sometimes you need more than one committee to deal with issues because there's just too much work to do with just one committee. Now, another thing that has struck me, you know, we've had some very welcome changes made to the substantive motion today. Now, I don't know the extent to which the motivation of making those changes has been in response to the knowledge that this amendment was going to be proposed. But, you know, what I know is that those changes made today have been very welcome. And if they hadn't have been made, then I would have been speaking about some of the deficiencies that there were in the motion otherwise. And the changes there have been about what the council is going to do going forward, not specifically about the planning response itself. and so I think very much in the spirit of those changes that have been made to the motion today, this amendment is proposing to look and consider how this council responds to this very welcome development so that we do maximise the benefits and minimise the downsides that come to us.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. We'll now ask Councillor Headley.
Thank you. That wasn't me. Thank you. Like others, I welcome the investment in our borough from this development. However, we as a council need to go beyond that initial welcome to work through diligently the implications for local residents and businesses. Like most big changes, there are opportunities to be seized, but also risks that need to be mitigated. And all of that is not going to be cost neutral for the council. That's why I'm very disappointed that after all this time, the council has not yet negotiated financial support for this work from the government. For the avoidance of doubt, it's important to recognise that without such a deal, the business rates benefits from this development are likely to be short-lived. Business rates in the future are to be reset regularly, possibly every 3 years. What this means is that any growth in that period is then redistributed nationally rather than kept locally. The only way to ensure the council has the resources to deal with the implications of the project, both to maximise the opportunities and to mitigate the risks, the only way is to have a deal with the government to achieve this. This isn't asking for something that hasn't happened elsewhere. Such a deal exists for Somerset and their gigafactory, where there is protection for the life of the project. And I quote from one of their documents, it says, additional income from business rates generated on site over its lifetime will be reinvested locally to realise the site's full potential to further support economic growth. This will help to improve the future success of the zone and the wider area. So we need to ensure that we have a deal between the government and this council to ensure that this council can do its job properly on behalf of residents and businesses locally. There's many such examples of work that needs to be done, and many of them have been mentioned already, but I particularly wanted to highlight the housing-related issues again. We have two phases to this: the need for accommodation for workers during the construction phase, and then the pressure on accommodation once the park is open. There is work to do here to minimise the impacts on local communities and the potential to price people out of renting or buying locally. This is not something to be taken lightly, and we need to make sure the council's response is up to the task. Further to this, it's important for the council to give the significance of this project the weight it deserves in the way we carry out our democratic and governance responsibilities, hence the reference to the overview scrutiny committees. That is why this new overview scrutiny committee should be set up to reflect the seriousness of the role we have, to ensure the maximisation of benefits and the minimisation of negative impact. It's an important role that we've got. Anything less than a full-blown constitutionally established committee isn't really up to the job that's before us. This is not a small task that will be completed quickly by a working group or something that can be bolted on to an existing committee and its existing sort of workload that's more than full workload, particularly if you take the Environment Committee, workload that's already beyond its capacity. There's so much that needs to be looked at. So you can't just bolt that on to the Environment Committee. This is a task for many years to come, and one that needs the weight and support, the weight of support of the Constitution to complete the task that comes from this work. I therefore urge everyone to back the amendment, to back our borough going forward successfully with this major project within our footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Councillor McMurdo and then Councillor Aboud.
Thank you. I echo what's been said. I think this is establishing that we take this very seriously, and this is a long-term thing. It's not for the current administration and not for the next administration. This is for decades to come. So I fully support this amendment. I would, Madam Speaker, with your agreement, just like to make one thank you, and that is at page 3 bracket 9 and 3 bracket 10 of the covering report. There are a list of names present, and I do thank all officers for the great work that they've done. But one name in particular that doesn't seem to be recorded that well, other than he was on the receiving list of emails many times, but he has been at the forefront, and with Dave Hodgson many years ago, but that is Patrick Lyons. So if we can just say thank you.
Thank you. That was a very worthy comment. Councillor Aboud.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to echo Councillor McMurdo's thanks to Comcast for choosing our borough for the latest iteration of the Universal Estate, and echo comments made by other members of this chamber on the amazing opportunity to put Bedford on the map. It's clear that Universal coming to Bedford Borough will bring many benefits, both in terms of improvements to infrastructure and jobs and opportunities for people of the local area. It's a really exciting time. That said, as mentioned in the Council's response, and as Councillor Coombs has already mentioned, consideration does need to be given to those people living locally to the site so that the disruption to their lives is kept to a minimum. I'd just like to bring a few examples to the Council's attention to emphasise the need for the housing, infrastructure, frontline service and transport strategies as mentioned in the amendment, all of which could have a direct impact on my residents, along with an overview and scrutiny committees to ensure that we can act as a critical friend and enable residents' voices to be considered. Residents of my ward of Wootton and Kempston Rural are broadly supportive of the application, but have concerns which I share, and I'd just like to bring them to your attention this evening. These are in no particular order. Firstly, the consultation response contains a section about parking, wherein the parking requirements for the park itself are discussed, and also a section on active travel, where the park's connection to surrounding areas for those walking and cycling are discussed. One of my concerns for the Wootton part of my ward in particular, but one that also applies to Stewartby and other surrounding settlements, is that we may see a rise in visitors to the park, parking in the village and using the active travel network to walk to the park, thereby saving themselves the cost of the on-site daily parking charge. I'm therefore pleased to see that in one of the recommendations before Council tonight is to bring forward parking controls in areas around the site. I would ask, as detailed in the amendment, that these controls are also extended to unadopted roads within these areas, as we already have an issue in Wootton where a car garage in Bedford is parking their untaxed cars that are for sale online on the Berryfields estate in Wootton, and as the roads are unadopted, little can be done to prevent this happening. Secondly, residents are particularly worried about traffic. We already have a large number of lorries using Woburn Road and Green Lane to bring waste from both inside and out of the borough to the incinerator, along with lorries going to and from the Amazon warehouse in Wootton. During the construction period of the park, there will undoubtedly be a large number of lorries using local roads to bring supplies to the site. I welcome the proposed mitigations being suggested in the proposed Condition 5, and ask the consideration is not just given to those vehicles related to the park site, but the cumulative effect of existing large vehicle movements to both the park site and other sites in the immediate area. Thinking about car traffic, we all know that sat-navs will take a driver down the quickest route to a destination. This may not include using the main trunk roads of the M1, A1 or the A421 where traffic studies have been carried out, but may see visitors to the park being routed through the small hamlets of the Kempston rural part of my ward and through Wootton. In fact, paragraph 3.56 of the Council's response under the bus services section states, and I quote, "Circa 2 school buses serve Fields Road in Wootton, on which, in the region of 80 children wait for school transport in the AM and alight in the PM. Therefore, increased traffic flow may increase the road safety risk to children waiting for these services." So our own statement is suggesting that traffic through Wootton will increase. We all remember the issues of the A421 flooding and the difficulties that brought. This highlighted the vulnerability of the areas surrounding the park to increased traffic. So I welcome the proposal of a transport steering group and the Council's participation as the local highways authority, and would ask that councillors for the areas most local to the site be consulted or allowed to feed residents' voices into this group to ensure that the effects on residents are considered as the construction of the park takes place and also once it's in operation. In terms of noise from the park, I welcome the Council's response of strongly encouraging the decision maker to consider the noise monitoring reporting to be produced by a third party, and for provisions to ensure unrestricted access by the Council to a noise complaints log maintained by the promoter. I would also welcome the sharing of any such information with councillors. So I'd like to finish by sort of saying I do support the amendment put forward by Councillor Van this evening and welcome the proposal for the strategy groups impacting local residents, along with this overview and scrutiny committee, to ensure we can act as that critical friend, such an important role, and enable residents' voices to be considered. Universal is going to have an amazing impact on the borough and the surrounding areas, with the prospect of investment and jobs bringing a bright future to our area, and I fully support our response and the application. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Lane.
Thank you. Just to sort of reiterate what Councillor Meader said, which is that I support this really important amendment. I think that the incredible work by officers, the manner in which Universal have engaged openly with all of us thus far, gives us a really great basis on which to build something positively on. But I would just kind of caution, yes, we're all really excited, but it's actually our responsibility to kind of put that to one side. We're not kids in sweet shops, we're elected representatives, and we've got a duty to do what's right for our residents. And I would suggest that ongoing engagement is the best way to do this. Scrutiny committees are arguably the most collegiate part of this council. We generally behave beautifully. We have cross-party conversations and actually get stuff done. So I am surprised that the idea of a scrutiny committee about this issue has raised some hackles. I wasn't going to actually comment tonight, but I was moved by the answer to Councillor Edmonds' question, and he asked what steps the council was taking about, in response to this. But I would say he was arguably brushed off. He was met with assurances and anecdotes. We know it's going to be great. We know it's going to be busy. We know it's going to make a difference. And, that might be lovely to hear, but actually, do you feel like you were given any information about how the council are moving this forward? I can remember watching a planning committee meeting back in October last year where Councillor Spice spoke very passionately about the positive impact that Winter Wonderland was going to have on local businesses. And yet local residents who were surveyed about that found that actually 95% of visitors who went to Winter Wonderland didn't then visit any local businesses. That was Winter Wonderland, that was a fairground in a park. If we miss the opportunity on a project of, the scale of Universal, then actually we're idiots. So, yeah, I support this motion, or the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Thank you, Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm really sad sat here tonight to listen to all the debate for nearly an hour on an amendment, yet nary a question has been asked about the report. The officers have spent weeks and weeks and hours preparing for this council tonight. And it's just really sad that we spent all this time on an amendment discussing it. Apart from Councillor McMurdo's comment about Patrick that's not in the report, we haven't asked any substantive questions about the report and how they might address some of the issues that Councillor Van has raised. It is a comment. I just wanted to put that on the line. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last call for comments. Right. What we will now do is Councillor Van will have the right to reply, and then Councillor Spice will have the right to reply, and then we will move to a vote. Councillor Van.
I'm just really sorry if the amendment made Councillor Weir sad. And I don't mean that in a tongue-in-cheek way, actually. I think we can be so excited by this, but recognise that we have a job to do. I'm surprised by the hostility to overview scrutiny that I've heard from some members this evening. I don't think it's anything to be scared of. I don't think there was an absence of substantive questions. There were some good questions from members earlier on in the debate. And I really actually think there were good questions of, Oh God, I felt like I was under scrutiny for quite a little bit there on the amendment, but I did try my best to answer questions. But it's not about the amendment, and it's not about this. It's about making sure that going forward, even separate to this SDO process, we're all excited by this. We all, we will all support with these changes in the amendment. They're two tiny technical changes basically, but then the other stuff around it. It is all exciting to Universal. I heard thanks to officers. I heard thanks to residents, thanks to the community. I heard so much good, substantive stuff as well. I heard some quite technical stuff about the consultation response as well. But I would say that I want to echo, I'm sorry, Councillor Weir, I feel because you were the last person to say something, I'm slightly over-responding to you perhaps. So apologies for that. But I would say, and I'd echo the words and the comments that have been made about Patrick Lyons, about officers, about Universal, and there are things I said as well, that perhaps there aren't loads of extra questions about some of the minutiae of the detail, because by the time it reaches this meeting for us this evening, I've asked those questions. I've asked those questions in meetings. I've talked to officers about this response and what does that mean. This is essentially significantly an outline planning application in all but name, to be honest. There's loads of detail, there's loads of discharging authority stuff. If somebody says, what's the specific place where that roller coaster will go? Don't know, because that's not in this. I have asked loads of substantive questions not in the context of this meeting as well. So I don't want this to be about the amendment. The amendment is just about making sure the council is doing its job when it comes to it. And I don't think it needed to be treated with quite such hostility actually this evening, because it is meant as a critical friend and as a constructive thing to make sure we're all doing our job. We are all, I think everybody has said, so excited by this project, whilst also conscious, as Councillor Lane said, of the job we have to do as councillors. And I think it's right that we take that with eyes open properly and still be as excited as the next person to get onto a roller coaster or visit the park when it opens. So let's get this right. Please support the amendment. I don't think it actually hinders or gets in the way of the consultation response or of anything the executive is doing or of anything Councillor Spice said. I really don't think it's intended in that way and it doesn't get in the way. So I think with that in mind, I would urge everybody to support it, please. I don't think you need to vote against it. I think you can support it cross-party if you wish.
Thank you. And now we have Councillor Spice with your right to reply before we move to the vote.
Thank you very much. And before I start, I just want to say that I have listened to everything that has been said. So please don't think that I haven't. But I would just like to remind all members here that the agenda item today is to agree the SDO response by the Borough Council and not to discuss local governance of the project that can and will come forward but is not on the agenda for tonight. So in response, the first two items regarding the local plan of 3.154 and 3.155, that is exactly what this item is for, and if those wish to be taken out, so be it. We will put that to the vote and they can be taken out. However, the further recommendations that are going forward are on governance. They are not on the agenda item. We, for information, have been working really hard with Universal, really hard with the officers, really hard with the government. It feels like you think that we haven't done anything. We have a task force already where Bedford Borough Council sit on, so they can already input into established scrutiny committees that we have already here. We have an employment task force, which you can find all the details on, technical term, 6.16.0, Environmental Controls Part 1. It is already there. We have a transport steering group with a travel plan included in the SDO, including the Bedford Borough Council, and we can feed again into other councils' committees. I'm just trying to be a little bit clear in case there's a misconception that we have ignored all this stuff, because as everybody has said, we have to get this right, but we are already doing it. We have financial impacts, as was mentioned, and discussions. You know, the reset is being spoken about with government already and how we can make that to the best for our borough. We are already looking at a tourism strategy. You may or may have missed, but I have now got tourism in my portfolio. So we are looking at tourism. It's part of economic development. It's part of making sure that Bedford Borough flourishes. We are already doing all of this stuff. And it just feels that this is just an additional thing, and we can look at it in the future and we can bring it to discussion when we've got more information, when we've thought about it better, rather than knee-jerk running into something that we say we want to be scrutiny, when really that isn't the agenda item for today. And that's all I'd like to remind you all, is the item for today is, are we happy with the consultation response that Bedford Borough Council are going to submit as part of the consultation response that Universal are having, the government are having? This is us speaking for our residents, and it sounds to me that on the whole, apart from these 2 minor amendments, we are happy with the consultation response. That is what we are here to discuss. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor McMurdo, unless it's a point of order.
It is indeed a point of order. Can I seek clarity that any recommendation in any report that comes to full council that we dismiss governance issues? Is that correct?
Who was that to?
Well, I'm asking the Chief Executive. I mean, what Councillor Spice has just said, this is not about governance. This is merely about the consultation response. So we just ignore governance. Is that correct?
Are you asking for clarification that the amendment as proposed is in order? It is.
Okay. We've had everybody speak, and now we move to the vote on the amendment. So those in favour, please show. And do we have any abstentions? The motion is carried. And now we will move to the amended motion, and we will take a vote on that. So those in favour? I think that was unanimous. It looked unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes item number 3. And as item number 4 has been withdrawn, we will now move to item number 5, which is somewhere on my papers. It is the... Hang on, I'll find it somewhere. It's the appointment of independent persons. The report of the Service Director of Governance on the appointment of independent persons on the Standards Committee is set out starting on page 5, bracket 1 of the agenda, and I move the recommendation within the report. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Sawyer is seconding it. Are there any questions on the report? Are there any comments on the report? Those in favour, please show. Those against? That is carried, and that is the end of the meeting. And thank you very much for coming along.